I'm Yuewei, and I'll be giving a talk today on project management for indie game developers.
So just like move this down.
I'll be sharing some of my insights I've learned over the years, and also from running on my own team.
Just here. Yep. All right. So yeah, you want to switch to the next slide?
Yep. So just a bit about me.
So move this
I'm
down.
a game developer and a software engineer, and this is some of the stuff I like to do in my spare time. So I love retro gaming. That's my game view. I like procedural generation as well, and of course jazz,
and you need to bring up this thing over here.
and some JRPG games. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Yuewei, the notes are over here if you want to see your notes.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know the slide change. So my experience with team management for indie game developers. So I'm the founder of Fiction XR, and we established in 2015. And the idea behind our studio is immersive entertainment with feels. So developing AR, VR games with a particular focus on the emotional effects. So over the years, I've learned a few things about how to manage a team for game development, and I'd like to share some of my insights on that. So developing games with a team, that's definitely the dream, but it doesn't always go smoothly. So what do you do when people lose passion for a project? Maybe you formed a dream team, but then over the course of a week or two, suddenly everyone starts dropping out. What do you do when that happens? How do you end the streak of your unfinished projects? It seems like sometimes it can be hard to finish up a project. And what do you do when your teammates don't really work as well as you think they would, and they're always missing action? And the answer to all of these is data project management, and I'll be going over some of the tips on this. So here are some of the root causes of what makes a dysfunctional team. Like, if you have a dream team, what could possibly go wrong? So these, I would say, are the main pillars of long-term productivity. Lack of team transparency, uncertainty, lack of accountability, and lack of direction. To go over a bit more, team transparency is more on communication between team members. Everyone should know what is happening with everybody. Uncertainty is always a level of unpredictability when you're making a project. How long will something take? How long will creating that 3D model be? Things like that. Lack of accountability. A lot of the time for indie devs, nobody's really doing this because they're in a paid contract. What do you do if you're just developing games for a passion with your friends, but you need to have that extra bit of accountability so everyone is doing what they say they will do? And of course, the lack of direction. You really need direction to keep the project going. If you don't have direction, the project can end any day. So with these main root causes of what makes a dysfunctional team in mind, I'll be going over some techniques you can adopt today to avoid these issues. So what we're going to go through, some immediate tips that you can apply to your team. So the purpose of this workshop isn't to act as an in-depth guide to Scrum or Agile or any existing project management frameworks. Only ideas from the existing frameworks immediately helpful to indie dev will be presented. Some aspects you'll likely already be using yourself. These are always best practices. But my goal is to present a more complete picture with reference to the Scrum model, which is the model that I use in my own team and has worked well over the years. And I'll also go through some free helpful tools you can use for your own project management. So let's begin with a bit of history. So before all the fancy pants project management models of today, we had the Waterfall Development model. And this was quite a simple model. This was about, this started off in a very linear manner, kind of like a waterfall. It just runs from the top, ends at the bottom, and then it's the end. And it will begin always with analysis, seeing what people want, what your users want. And then after that, requirement specification, figuring out what you need to do, what you need to make in order to meet the user's needs, and then designing and developing, testing, and then deployment. So these are fixed time periods. So it will be something like 2 months on requirement specification, maybe 6 months in development, and then testing for a month, and then finally a month for deployment. So while this sounded really nice on paper, there was some really bad issues with this. It was quite problematic. So this introduced high amounts of risk and uncertainty because you're not, think about this. If I asked you, how long will you take to make how much can you do in 1 week? Say, how many 3D models can you make in 1 week versus how many 3D models can you make in 2 years? The longer something is, the harder it is to predict. And this was all about long stretches of time. It really doesn't work so well for more complex, less easily predictable projects like games. And one of the main issues is they can't accommodate changing requirements as easily. So to kind of combat this, people came up with a new methodology for software in any kind of software development, and that would include games. And this is the Agile methodology. So this is all about embracing continuous development. And before, Waterfall was all about doing things in just one go. You develop, you get the requirements, you develop, you test, and you deploy. But in this case, it is about continuous development. So not just doing it once, but doing it multiple times. Embracing the fact that you will have to take user feedback and continue remaking the same product over and over. Adaptation is a core part, reducing uncertainties. So this agile methodology has adaptation built in. So if anything changes, if you have the agile mindset, you'll be able to tackle it instead of it being a problem. And it helps build communication. So a framework implementing the agile methodology is called, one of the frameworks implementing the agile methodology is called Scrum. And it's used widely in any kind of software products today, including games. So since this is the model I think works really well for games and has worked for me personally, I'll be going over some of the specifics in this model today. And hopefully you guys can adopt something from it as well. So some of the things we go through from the Scrum framework. So what are the roles in the framework? What is the sprint planning? What are daily stand-ups? What are sprint retros? And what is the definition of done? And how all of these can help you reduce uncertainty, increase accountability, and also maximize transparency in a game dev team. Yep, these are kind of what I just said. So all of these are vital to a working team, and a project often falls apart because one of the above is violated. So you do need to reduce uncertainty, you do need to increase accountability of team members, you do need to enhance communication and maximize team transparency. So what makes up a Scrum team? So a Scrum team is typically has around 5 to 9 individuals who work towards completing projects and delivering products. And this is the typical size for a small indie team, so this is quite useful. Usually a Scrum team is about a Scrum team is actually the smallest unit you can have for a company, so you wouldn't just have one Scrum team, you have like 5 or 6 or even 10. But in our case, we're just going to focus on the individual unit itself, not what to do between Scrum teams, because usually an indie team wouldn't be that big anyway. The fundamental Scrum team comprises of one Scrum Master who focuses on making sure that it's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons. Like you've got like a dungeon master, and it's like kind of keeps the whole Scrum thing going, the roles, the processes, everything. You've got a product owner. Sometimes the Scrum Master and product owner will be combined, and that's often the case in indie teams. The product owner is basically in charge of communicating with your clients and seeing what their users, what their needs are. And you, of course, a group of developers. So the first really important thing, and this is instead of calling things tasks, you want to call them user stories, according to the Scrum mindset. So what is a user story? It's an informal general explanation of a software feature, written from the perspective of the end user or customer. Why is this important? Well, when you're thinking of a task, you're thinking of something you need to do, just a feature. But often the problem with this is that you end up with a lot of features that may not necessarily bring value to your users. So everything you do should have someone that will use your product in mind. So an example is, instead of saying create red cancel button for menu, a user story would frame it as a player, I will be able to exit out of the menu in an intuitive and obvious manner. So this is decoupling the actual task from the user need, because your goal of making it so that you can exit out of the menu in an intuitive and obvious manner could be done in many different ways. It might not be a red cancel button. You might not even use a cancel button. Maybe you're using an escape keyword. So this is kind of putting the focus on the user need. And when you're doing a user story, you always focus on a specific user persona your user could be a player, your user could be a streamer, your user could be even an investor. So just always having in mind a specific persona. The next really important point of Scrum that will help with any project is the definition of done. So think about this. Imagine you're in a team scenario, and then you ask the guy in your team, hey man, how far complete do you think your piece of code is? And then maybe that person will say, about 60% way through. And they took 2 days to get to 60%. You ask them one day later and say, hey, how complete do you think your piece of code is? And then they'll say 65%. And then you ask them again 3 days later, and then they say something like 80%. So that's very annoying, because if you have things in percentages, you will never really be able to be certain when something is done. It's hard to predict. So the best way to go about it is to just have a definition of when something is done. So every user story must contain verification. You must be able to say for sure when is something done. Otherwise, a task will go on forever. So another part of the Scrum process that is really useful is the sprint. So what is a sprint? A sprint is a short time box period where a Scrum team works to complete a set amount of work. So having sprints increases predictability. If you don't have something similar to a sprint in a project can feel like it'll go on forever. Let's say you want to make your top-down shooter, and then you are like saying, let's get this done in 1 year. But 1 year is a long time. How are you going to possibly predict how much you can do in 1 year? But if you try to break it down into sprints, which are fixed time periods, usually around 1 to 4 weeks, it becomes a lot easier. If you ask your team how much you can get done, how much everyone can get done in 2 weeks, it's a lot easier to say that for certain than, say, a month or two. The next really important point of Scrum is the daily stand-ups. So a daily stand-up is basically a daily meeting with the Scrum team usually lasting about 15 minutes. And this is something that's really helped my team personally, and I think this will help others, especially students, because when you're in university, it's really hard to have accountability. Everyone's got different things going on in life. It's really easy for someone to drop out of a team because of whatever's happening in life. So by having these daily 15-minute meetings, it increases transparency. In this meeting, you basically talk about what you've worked on today and what you're going to work on next, and any roadblocks that you're experiencing. By going over that, everyone knows what's going on in the team, and nobody feels missed out. Without the daily stand-ups, it's very easy for someone to just gradually drop out of the project, feel like they're not involved, things like that. And
my bad.
so, and even though it's supposed to be a meeting every day, the purpose of this is to reduce the number of meetings. So these are meant to be just about 15 minutes. And it's something that's really important for everybody to agree on. It keeps everybody accountable. So, yeah. So, the sprint retro is basically like an hour-long meeting that you perform with your team after a sprint. And in the sprint retro, you want to talk about with each other how the sprint went. So this is basically like a reflection. So here's some useful project management tools for indie developers. So these three I would recommend for everybody, anyone. So Trello, Jira, and Notion. And the best bit is that they're all free. So Trello is great for keeping track of tasks and more minute-to-minute things like bug fixes or small refinements. So these are, so it's basically like a fancy collaborative checklist, task list you can use. This is really easy to get started, and anyone should use this. Jira is basically the go-to tool for Scrum project management. So this is where you want to keep your user stories, etc. And these should be separate from your tasks, like your minute-to-minute tasks, which you would put on something like Trello. And finally, Notion is a great tool for project note keeping. So you can compile your project information and project notes in a one easy place, easily accessible place, and it's very aesthetic and minimalist. So it's a great alternative to Google Docs. After I adopted this for my team, everything was a lot easier to work with. And yeah, does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
So your software pieces complimentary or individual?
So for Trello is basically free for any size team. So Trello is probably like the easiest one to get into. Jira does have limitations, but they're more for features that you will use in the enterprise situation. So for indies, it won't be a problem.
What I mean is, would you use all three at the same time, or would you pick one?
Oh, right. So, okay. So you mean in that sense. Sorry about that. So we use all three at once because, as I said, they all have their own purpose in a project. So Trello is great for task keeping. Jira is great for Scrum management. Notion is great for keeping project notes, information, everything together. Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions? Yep.
So instead of writing just a list of tasks, you'd use user stories instead? Or would you just have like user stories along with like a list of tasks?
So when you're trying to break down your project into pieces of work to do, the whole point of talking about the user stories is you should frame everything you do to be around the user and how you can bring value to the user. So it's all about getting into that mindset. So even if it can sound funny, writing something like, as a player, I can do this, etc. It's actually a really useful kind of reverse thinking way to make sure everything you do is actually going to contribute towards the end product. And then, of course, you can have tasks, but tasks will be for more minute-to-minute things. They're not really like stuff like bug fixes and stuff. You want to put them into a user story. User stories are more broad and general.
The stories typically represent use cases, right?
Yes. So everything you do should have a use case, pretty much. Everything you work on.
Yeah,
That's the
and the use cases in user stories.
Yep, so put down all the use cases from the perspective of the user. That's really important. Yep. Anyone else have any questions? Cool. Yeah, sorry for the kind of haphazardly put together slides. I was really sick the past 3 days and I only just got a bit better and I have to kind of put things quickly together. But I really want to share some of the info, some of the things, practices I've been using for my own team over the course of the years that have worked. I think it's useful for anyone, so, but I didn't actually do the presentation as well. But if anyone has any other questions after, like I'm happy to answer anything. So.
Do you want to show anything of your team?
Not in particular. I mean, I rushed the first few slides really. Maybe we can go back to them. The first.
So yeah, just go back to just click on the drop down there. So slide like 2 or 3. Just go left. Yep. Just drop down and go. So yeah, which slide do you want?
Maybe the second page. Yeah, so not this one actually, that one afterwards. So as a team we've developed quite a few games. I wasn't able to get all the pictures, but this is Pizza Master VR. This is a game we released on Steam 2 years ago. So you play as a pizza chef. And then it's actually also an asymmetric multiplayer game. So someone plays in VR as the chef, while someone plays on the PC, mouse and keyboard, as a waiter. And then you kind of have to work together. And people keep comparing to Overcooked. And that's actually a good thing. Even though I've never actually played Overcooked before, everyone's like, did you rip the idea off that? Actually, the inspiration behind this was Papa's Pizzeria, if you guys have ever played that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lovely game. This is another game, totally realistic in VR. So this was like basically the first VR game I released on Steam. This was all about sledding in virtual reality. So it's like high speed, going through different environments, kind of like Tony Hawk, doing tricks and avoiding obstacles, stuff like that. This one is Tyrone Hard Life, which is like a PS1 inspired beat 'em up basically, set in the 80s. And this one's unreleased, but it's still in development. And then finally, this one is our most recent project that we're putting more efforts on. And this is Project Mix. So in this game, you play as a bartender in virtual reality in a cyberpunk world. And then you can, it's a lot more storytelling focused. And that's kind of where our team has shifted towards. Yeah, that's kind of a bit of what we did.
Okay, I'm just gonna like, can I show one of the videos, like Pizza Master?
Sure.
Just like quickly.
No problem.
Let's see.
I think you're missing the V.
Oh, whoops.
Maybe the Steam page, yeah, that will work fine.
I hope there's no copyright issues.
Get some sound. Definitely no copyright issue. All the music is original. We have a composer in our team.
So yeah, what you need to do.
Onion and olives.
One coming up.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Ah, that's wrong.
My bad. Pizza's ready. Mamma mia!
I need a pink drink with 3 ice cubes. I need a boscaiola and an onion.
Please wait, I'm not ready.
I also need an onion and olives. Just onion with an orange drink with 4 ice cubes.
Here you go.
Still need an onion.
Oh man, what are you doing?
Ah, sorry. No.
Oh.
Thanks for showing the video.
Anything else you want to show?
Right now, the project we're working on is the project I mentioned, Project Mix, is actually a visual novel, a VR visual novel. So if anybody has interest in something like that, let me know. Like if you want to play test it, try it out. Like maybe there's someone here who's like a visual novel enthusiast. Like you are the people I'm looking for to try the game. So let me know.
All right. And I think that's it.